They laughed when they saw his weapon. Not a rifle, not a pistol, not even a knife. A bow, old wood, hand-carved grip, steel-tipped arrows wrapped in cloth, something that looked like it belonged in a museum, not a war. The German soldiers mocked him openly. "Medieval hunter," one of them said, shaking his head. Another mimed pulling an arrow and burst out laughing. A third spat into the dirt and turned away, already bored. They didn't bother to disarm him properly. That was their first mistake. The forest around them was thick, pine, fog, and silence. The kind of place where sound died fast and tracks disappeared by morning. He stood there quietly, eyes down, shoulders relaxed. He let them believe he was harmless. What they didn't know was that he had grown up here. He knew every animal trail, every ravine, every place where sound carried and where it didn't. And he had hunted since he was a boy, not for sport, for survival. That night, the camp was careless. No perimeter lights, no proper rotation. Just laughter, cards, boots off. Confidence born from numbers and guns. The first arrow flew without a sound. It struck clean. No scream, no warning. By the time the body hit the ground, the archer was already moving. Silent. Invisible. Gone. By dawn, one German sergeant was dead. They blamed partisans. Bad luck. A stray shot. They still laughed about the bow. They wouldn't laugh tomorrow. The body was found at sunrise. A sergeant. Face pale, no gunshot wound. An arrow. Buried clean and deep. The camp fell silent. Someone laughed nervously and said it must have been a trick. Another said it was impossible. Bows were slow, outdated, useless. But no one could explain how the sentries heard nothing. They tightened security. 2 guards per post, weapons loaded. Orders shouted louder than usual. Fear always made men loud, and loud men were easy to track. He watched from the tree line, not rushing, not angry, patient. He studied their patterns the way he once studied deer, who looked away first, who smoked, who paced too far from the fire. By midnight, he had his second target. The arrow struck the throat. The sergeant dropped without a sound, hands clawing at nothing. The guard beside him turned and felt the second arrow pierce his shoulder, pinning him to a crate. By the time the alarm was raised, the forest was already empty. That morning, 2 bodies lay in the camp. No shells, no footprints, no trail. Only arrows. Orders came fast after that. Hunt him down. Burn the woods. Set traps. They called him a ghost, a demon, a myth. They still didn't understand the truth. This wasn't chaos. This was hunting. By the end of day 1, 2 German sergeants were dead, and the archer had already chosen the next 3. By the second night, no one laughed anymore. The camp was louder than ever. Shouting orders, metal clanking, boots pacing in circles. Fear made men restless. Restless men made mistakes. They doubled the patrols, lit more fires, shot into the trees at shadows. Nothing came back. No gunfire, no screams, only silence. He moved while they argued, between tents, through smoke, along paths no one bothered to watch anymore. They were guarding the forest. He was already inside. The 3rd sergeant died near the supply crates. 1 clean arrow through the ribs. The body slid down slowly, unseen. Minutes later, another patrol passed within arm's reach of the killer, never noticing the shape pressed flat against the ground. Panic followed at dawn. 3 sergeants gone. No enemy spotted, no trail. Officers began sleeping fully dressed. Some refused to sleep at all. Rumors spread faster than orders. He's not human. He can't miss. He sees in the dark. By the 4th night, discipline cracked. A sergeant wandered off alone, tired, angry, convinced the danger was exaggerated. The arrow found him before he could shout. That made 4. And now the truth was impossible to deny. This wasn't sabotage, this wasn't luck. Someone was systematically hunting leadership, and he was doing it without a single gunshot. The order finally came. Withdraw by morning. but they were already too late. He had 3 days and 3 names left. By the 3rd day, the forest was burning. Not all at once. Controlled fires, lines of flame meant to force him out. They laid traps along the paths. Wires, mines, hidden sentries with fingers shaking on triggers. This time, they were sure. This time, they would catch him. He watched the fires from a ridge above the valley. Calm, calculating. Fire scared animals, not hunters. He didn't run from the trap. He reshaped it. He shifted their attention, snapping branches where no one stood, leaving a single arrow buried in a tree trunk, deliberately visible. They took the bait. A squad moved fast, spreading out, chasing a shadow. That's when the forest went quiet again. The first arrow hit a sergeant in the thigh. Not fatal. He screamed. And screams made men predictable. 2 others rushed to help. One caught an arrow under the helmet. The second dropped after a shot through the shoulder that spun him into the dirt. They fired wildly. Trees splintered. Smoke thickened. But the archer was already somewhere else. Above them. Behind them. Watching. By sunset, the fires died down. So did their confidence. Another sergeant was found near a burned-out trench. No weapon raised. Arrow straight through the heart. That made 6. That night, no one slept. At dawn, orders were clear. Full withdrawal. Immediately. They packed fast. They moved loud. And in their hurry, they forgot one thing. A retreat was still movement. And movement was what he hunted best. The retreat began before sunrise. Engines started too early. Orders overlapped. Maps were folded with shaking hands. They wanted out of the forest. Fast. He watched from higher ground. No rush, no anger, only focus. Retreating troops were louder than camps. Columns stretched thin. Spacing broke down. Perfect conditions. He followed parallel to the road, unseen. Moving when they moved. Stopping when they stopped. Waiting. The last sergeant rode near the center of the column. Older, experienced, certain he'd survive what others hadn't. He never looked up. The arrow came from the trees. It struck clean. Not dramatic, not loud, just final. The column halted in confusion. Shouts echoed. No one saw where it came from, and no one dared chase it. That made 7. 7 sergeants, 3 days, 1 bow. By nightfall, the forest was empty. No fires, no boots, no voices. Only tracks heading away, and none leading back. Weeks later, stories spread among the units. About a hunter who didn't use guns. About arrows that came from nowhere. About a forest that fought back. Some said he was a myth. Others said myths didn't leave evidence. The bow was never found. Neither was the archer. But long after the war moved on, soldiers still avoided that stretch of forest. Because somewhere between the trees, silence still remembered him. The war moved on. Maps were redrawn. Front lines shifted. New orders replaced old fears. But the forest remained unchanged. New units passed through the area months later. Different commanders, different uniforms. Same road. They noticed things immediately. The silence. The way sound seemed to die between the trees. The lack of wildlife near the old campsites. Veterans refused to talk about it. They just said, "Don't stop here." One patrol found something half buried in the dirt. Not a weapon cache, not documents, just arrowheads. Old steel, hand-forged, worn smooth by years of use. No markings, no name, only proof. Stories spread quietly, not officially, not in reports, around fires, in whispers. About a hunter who never fired a gun. About leadership that vanished in the night. About a bow that turned confidence into fear. Some said he fought for revenge. Others said for home. A few believed he simply never left the forest at all. No one knew the truth. Years later, when the war was over, locals still avoided that road at dusk. They said the forest remembered, and that sometimes, when the wind was right, you could hear the sound of a bowstring, not being pulled, but released. No report ever mentioned the bow. Official documents spoke of unexplained losses, command disruption, environmental pressure. Nothing more. Years later, historians argued over the incident. Some claimed it was exaggerated. Others said it was impossible. A bow couldn't change anything, they said. One man couldn't slow an entire unit. They said that because they never walked the forest. Local records told a different story. Supply routes altered. Commanders reassigned. That road permanently avoided. Not because of mines, not because of ambushes, because of reputation. Old villagers passed down the story quietly. Not as hero worship, not as propaganda, as a warning. The forest didn't belong to armies. It belonged to those who understood it. One detail never changed between versions. The archer never celebrated, never stayed to be seen, never claimed credit. He disappeared the same way he fought, without noise. Some believed he survived the war, others believed the forest was his grave, but every version agreed on one thing. After those 3 days, no one ever mocked a bow again. Time erased the tracks. Rain washed away footprints. Moss climbed over burned ground. Trees reclaimed the road. But not the memory. Decades later, veterans still spoke carefully when the topic came up. Not with pride, not with anger, with respect. They said modern weapons didn't matter there. Ranks didn't matter. Numbers didn't matter. Only understanding the land did. The forest never revealed his name. No grave, no photograph, no medal, just absence. Historians eventually labeled the incident as unconfirmed. Psychological impact. Localized myth. But myths don't change roots. Myths don't delay units. Myths don't survive decades. Somewhere between fact and legend, the truth stayed simple. A bow was mocked. Silence answered. Arrogance lost. And long after the war ended, long after uniforms changed and flags fell, one lesson remained untouched. Never underestimate what you don't understand.